Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Likuteu Moharan Shir. I apologize for last week. I was on my way to Uman, and we made it all the way to the airport. With all the paperwork, with all the different kind of sidurim that you wait to do. And they canceled the flights on us, so we turned back. So, B'ezrat Hashem, Kadosh Baruch Hu should help, and should be able to get there for Rosh Hashanah. In the meantime, the hearts are there. All right. So, we are Likuteu Moharan Terech Chaf. We are holding by Sif Gimel. Basically, Rabbeinu explains that there is a neshama in the world that all the illumination, explanation, erudition, exponentials of the Torah come from this neshama. For this neshama is called a be'er. It's milashon biur, explanation. And it's also milashon, the thing that it keeps on giving water. It waters everybody. And this neshama is the source for all biur Torah. All the explanations of the Torah, all the understandings of what the Torah means come through that particular neshama. And that neshama goes through tremendous yisurim. And all the diburim of this neshama are hot like burning coals. Now, when the diburim of this neshama cool off, this neshama passes away. And then it is extremely hard to get real clarkite, real clear view of what the Torah means. And when that happens, people are revolting, as it were. They're coming up against its tzaddikim. They don't realize it, but the neshama is thirsting for biur Torah. All this happened during the time that Miriam, who is signifies, Al Pi Pshat, we're talking about Miriam and Neviah, who was the sister of Moshe and Aaron. But Beremes, we're talking here about the neshama who is tightly connected to the be'er, to the well. That's the neshama that all the explanations of the Torah, all biur Torah come through this neshama. And when that neshama passes away, now anybody who wants to draw biur Torah, explanations, clarity in the Torah, has to beg the Leva Elyon, has to beg the supernal heart from which all the rachamim flow, all the words flow, all biur Torah flow. And the person needs to do two things. Actually, first thing first is a person, as we'll learn now, a person needs to be mikasher himself to all the people who are there during the explanation, the explanation of the Torah. So I'm mikasher myself to each and every person who's here. And because you all have chelik in the Torah. And ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom, that should give diburim chamim ka'esh, words that are hot as burning coals. And just berachamim v'tachamim, and the Bezrat Hashem, with your schus and my schus and Rebeinu's schus, it should keep down and hold down the natural wickedness that there are in us, and not to use the schus of the ma'asim tovim that we have, to pull down the diburim and like force the Kadosh Baruch Hu to give us diburim. But please, just give us diburim, so from the rock, from the lava alien. So diburim that is shaykh to all of us. This is, as we said, that Moshe Rabbeinu came and spoke. The Kadosh Baruch Hu told him that he has to speak to the rock, speak to the Sela. We said the Sela is the source of words. The Sela is the source, Sela Elyon. It means my strength, which is the heart, Kadosh Baruch Hu, the sphere of Bina. And Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us diburim that are hot as fire. Once we have those, once we have these diburim, to have birur Torah, so we'll be able to understand these incredible chidush Torah that Rabbeinu is telling us. So now we start in Sif Gimel. V'yesh chiluk, there is a difference, a great difference, between an explanation that the person explains to himself, like he's learning, he's explaining things to himself. And you sit and you learn and go like, so he's saying, oh, I don't get it. All right, well, no, this is legitimate. When you're learning, that's the only way to learn. But when a person is explaining the rabbin, explaining to people, because when a person speaks to the rabbin, and before the biur, before the explanation, he connects it with their souls. If he does that, if a person does that, Chazal says that the Kadosh Baruch Hu does not reject the plea of a crowd, of the many. A person, single person, if you ask the Kadosh Baruch Hu, well, it depends, it depends. It's chos, it depends, it's whatever. But when the rabbin come together, with a lot of people come together, then Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't push it away. Can kabir as the kabir, which means a lot, a great strength of the multitude. Kadosh Baruch Hu does not push it away. He accepts it. So that tefillah of the single person becomes a tefillas rabbin, because he has with him all the neshamas of all the people who are there to hear what he's saying, what he's learning. Tefillas yochid, however, the tefillah of a single person, when he's trying to pull down for himself, the meaning of what the Torah is saying. Maybe, at that point in time, they don't accept his tefillah. The time is not auspicious. Maybe he doesn't have enough schuyas. Maybe it's not the right time for him. But tefillas Rabbim, Kodesh Baruch Hu does not push away. This is what we said. The Kodesh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu that when he ordered him to bring forth the explanation, the Biurei Torah, to illuminate and to clarify the words of the Torah. He says, "V'dibarta el hasela l'neim." You should speak to the sela, to the rock, in front of them while they are looking at you. That your tefillah should be during that time that the tzibur, the crowd, are coming together. And they're there and you're connected to them. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to get all the entire Am Yisrael together during the time that he's pulling down the illuminations, explanations of the Torah, and connects himself to all the nefashos, all the neshamas, and pour his heart for Hashem Yisbarach. And afterwards, he will draw down from the supernal heart, the Biurei Torah, and he will darshan it, and he will explain it to all the people. And this is what it says, Hakil Am, gather the people, call them together. The main meaning is, Kodesh Baruch Hu also told them to gather all of the people together. In Me'er Nachal, he says as follows: it seems to me that Kavanas Rabbeinu Zichron Lebracha on the pasuk Parshas Vayelech, in the parsha of Hakel, in other words, gather all the people together, crowd them together. And because over there it says, "Tika es Torah azois neged kol Yisrael," read this Torah before the entire Israel, and read them in their ears, sound it in their ears. Gather all the people. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem Yisbarach told Moshe Rabbeinu to draw down, to bring down the Biurei Torah, the explanations of the Torah. That when he wants to do it, first of all, he has to connect himself he has to pour his heart to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it says over here. And over there, he has to do it dafka in a time when the people are gathered together. So, when a person does that, he says, now gather all the people together and pour your heart to Hashem Yisbarach, and then bring down the Diburim and Biurim and explanations from the supernal heart. As it says, Vakeres Am. Now Rabbeinu says that's the difference. Ben Aloymed Mitoich HaSefer, when somebody is learning from a Sefer, and somebody who hears from the Chacham Be'atzmai. If you recall, in Torah tests, we also, the Torah test started, the Rabbeinu is saying that there's a big difference when you hear it from the Chacham Be'atzmai than when you read it from a Sefer. Here Rabbeinu touches this Nikuda again. Here, over there, in Torah tests, Rabbeinu explains that's because the Chacham, with his good deeds, has actually created the speech of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore he heard it with proper yira. So when you hear it from him, you get tremendous yira when you hear it. So that's a difference by hearing from a tzaddik to reading from a sefer. Here Rabbeinu touches the same inyan of how great it is to hear it from the tzaddik himself, as opposed to just reading from a sefer, but here from a different angle. And he says, Ki hashomea mipi hachacham, somebody who hears it from the chacham be'atzmoi, bevadai niskasha nishmaso nishmas hachacham mishas tfilosim. Bevadai, your neshama is included with the neshama of the chacham in the time that he is davening, that he's asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give him the Dibur HaTorah, Biur HaTorah, when he's davening. And it's more than that. V'yesh lezeh adam, and that person who is there while the Torah is being drawn, while the Chacham davens for it, he has a chelik b'biur. He has a part in the explanation that the Chacham brings down. It says, K'alidei atfila, now Rabbeinu brings another hakdom, another nikud, another tremendous chiddush. He says, when K'alidei atfila, when the Chacham davens and he prays to Kodesh Baruch Hu and he's asking Kodesh Baruch Hu, that adds kedusha above. I mean, we naturally understand that tefillah means that you beg from below and pull shefa from above, which is obviously true. But when you daven from below, you're adding kedusha, you're adding strength in the Shemayim. That he said, "Nu oiz le'elokim," give strength to Hashem. Rabbeinu says in Torah Kufiyat based that when a person davens, speaks with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a dibur emes, a word of truth, at that point the person is feeding all the realms of the angels, and the realms of the Galgalim, and in this world. Everything is being fed through the tefillah of a person. So a person is adding kedusha, especially with the chacham or his mechadesh. He's adding kedusha above. It's called that tefillah nitvasef kedusha lemala. And he says, "V'chol tefillah," and every tefillah hayotzes meharbe neshamas, that comes out of a lot of souls. It adds kedusha above, and it awakens, it excites, no, what's the word for it? It excites the level elyon. It wakes it up. And that brings about a great influx of the heavenly bounty from above. Now, I can't give you a guarantee that this is what is meant over here, but it seems to me to be almost like an obvious observation, but being that I haven't heard it or haven't seen it, so I can't say it for sure, so you can take it with a grain of salt. When we are looking at the fact Moshe Rabbeinu davened, and as we'll see on, Moshe Rabbeinu did not connect himself to the people. He wasn't mekayem v'dibata el hasela le'neiim, and you will speak to the rock in front of their eyes. But what did he do? He hit the rock. Rabbeinu says like somebody taking something by force. And that stick, Rabbeinu says, this is the strength of his good deeds. Nevertheless, that too is taking something b'koyach. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu did not add that level of kedusha that he would have had he connected himself to the neshama of all the people together. And because of that, not enough kedusha was added above. So as a result, Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen had to pass away. Because when the tzaddik passes away, obviously it adds kedusha above. So whatever it is that they detracted by Moshe Rabbeinu not connecting himself to Klal Yisrael had to be rectified by Moshe Rabbeinu passing away. Shem Yilachem. So that brings about a possible question. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu is Shorish Nishmas Yisrael, right? He's the root of all the neshamas of all the Jews. Rabbi Akiva said to his Talmidim when he wanted to wake them up, to crack a little, not a joke, but a trivia question to get them interested, on the lighter side of things. So he asked the Talmidim, where have we seen that the woman gave birth to 600,000 neshamas? And he said, that's Yocheved, that's the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu. That because Moshe Rabbeinu includes all 600,000 Nishmas Yisrael. So that, Kaviyahol, possibly poses a question. If Moshe Rabbeinu already included all the 600,000 Nishmas Yisrael, why did he have to connect himself to Klal Nishmas Yisrael that was standing there? It would seem obvious that he was already pre-connected. He included them. So by Moshe Rabbeinu himself davening and asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it would seem that that condition is already met. So a possible explanation, again, as I said, no guarantees, no good, no money. Rabbeinu says about Batei Tefillah that when people come to daven together, they multiply each other exponentially. As Sefer Yetzirah says, that two letters build 4 houses. 3 letters already, builds 6 houses. 4 letters, 24. And 5 is 5 times 24, which is 120 something. And so forth and so on. So by the time when you get to 1 million, you have a huge number of variables. Because it's tzirufim. These are all the covenants that Am Yisrael has each one of Am Yisrael has with one another. When you take a look at the number of covenants that Am Yisrael is involved with one another, it comes up to millions. So you can say, Wilson writes about it in Likuteu Moharan. So how is it ever possible for somebody, I mean, you sign a guarantee to millions of loans. How will you ever, how will you ever be able, to hold that weight? How will you be able to make good on all this? So Reb Nosson says that this is the tzirufi batei tefillah. When a yid comes and another person comes, in other words, if there are 10 people, and an 11th person comes, the difference in combinations between 10 and 11 is far, far greater than all the 10 put together. And when a 12th person comes, again, it multiplies it in power of 11 until when you get to 20, you get into a number that you need, I don't know how many numbers, how many digits you need in order to represent this numbers. It's billions, sheba billions. Like they say that of the person that invented the game of chess came to the king of Persia. That's what the legend says. And the king of Persia was so pleased with his invention. He says, what do you want as your schar? So he said, what I want is that you put 1 grain of wheat on the first square of the 64 and 2 grains on the second square and 6 grains on the third square and 24 grains on the fourth square, and so forth and so on. So the king said, you got it, you're not asking for much. Until the calculator what it was asking, and it came out that if they all produce wheat for 100 years, they wouldn't be able to pay him. What this cheshbon is about. So therefore, I would venture to say, and again, no guarantees, but it makes sense, that being mekasher, that Moshe Rabbeinu being mekasher himself to all the people, and he's already connected to each and every one of them because he includes each and every one of them. But nevertheless, each one is an own manifestation of a neshama, a separate neshama. And altogether, they created the kedusha that they all collectively created was exponentially beyond anything. And that was the kedusha that was missing. Possibly. I mean, you can take it or leave it. It's based on Divrei Rabbeinu. But nevertheless, this is what needs to be done. So, but and every person that is there has a chelik in Biur Torah. That's why, whenever it is that you learn Divrei Rabbeinu, the Rabbin, I remember that between, I think it was 2002 or 3, until 2007, 2008, there used to be a radio station called Radio Breslov. And for 4.5 years, I had the schus of having a program there. And one of the things that I used to do there is, I used to call it Ticha Sefer. I used to open up a book. Now, this obviously is an advertiser stunt. What I used to do is, I would take a Likuteu Moharan or Likuteu Eitzes or whatever, and people would call in and give a name, and I would write the name down. And then at that particular point, I would take the sefer, I would open it up and read whatever it is that my eye fell on, and say whatever it is that came to mind. But needless to say, this was by far the most popular piece of the program, which was, Baruch Hashem, had a great attendance. Or at the best of times, there were about 100,000 people listening. And this was the most popular segment of the show. Because, everybody wants to know, it's like from reading, in tea leaves or coffee or whatever. L'havdef of Avdolos, obviously, this is B'Kedusha. Everybody wanted to know. Everybody wanted to know what Rabbeinu has to tell them. And I remember that I used to speak, and people used to say, like, they would call me later and says, how did you know? How do you know that I was struggling with this? How do you know that I'm dealing with this? And I would always tell the same answer. I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't. I seriously don't. I don't have a clue what it is that you think that I know about you. None. And what I do know is, as long as I say Diburim of Rabbeinu, and I don't try to invent who knows what, but say things that I know for sure are true, because I was mekabel from my own teachers, I don't have to worry what you're going to hear. Why? Because if you are listening to the shir, Rabbeinu is giving you what it is that you need. It goes through me, but I don't have a clue what it is that I said that you needed. Rabbeinu says, when the Chacham Amiti, when the Tzaddik says the Torah, everybody has a chelik. Everybody gets the chelik in the Torah. Everybody has a brick in the wall of the tremendous Torah that the Tzaddik is bringing down. So if this explanation that we're talking about the combination of all the souls together, the Batei Tefillah, that's the reason why it makes so much difference that if 50,000 people come to Uman and one more person comes, people will say, like, what's the big deal? Already 50,000 people there. What is one more? Well, one more doesn't resemble 50,000. It's way, it's like, it's already in the realms that you need a supercomputer just, to fachajim what the number is of combinations, of how much kedusha goes above and goes up. So he says, so the tefillah that comes together, every tefillah that comes out, mehar ben neshamas, that emanates from a lot of souls, it adds kedusha above. And it excites, it awakens, it makes the leva elyon, it brings it to bring out, to pour much more dibur, much more bi'ur Torah, than just the tefillah of the Chacham alone. V'leva elyon shofech meimei bir beyoser. Hakol lefi rov ha'anoshim. Everything corresponding commensurately to the number of people who are there when the Chacham is explaining the Torah. The more people, the more viewer come. Vivchinas seba Kodesh Baruch Hu v'ata Yosef ta Kodesh Yosef Tilas Yisrael. That you, Kodesh Baruch Hu, you're sitting to hear the praises of Am Yisrael. What it says, Adeh Ki Tilas Yisrael. There's the tefillah that the Chacham davens when he is connected to the entire Israel. It adds to the Kedusha of the Kodesh Baruch Hu above. Now to explain a little bit more, so we can understand what it exactly means. What does it mean that it adds to the Kedusha of the Kodesh Baruch Hu above? Why would we need to add to the Kedusha of the Kodesh Baruch Hu? Kodesh Baruch Hu is the entire Kedusha, everything is Him. The answer is that Bevadai, Kodesh Baruch Hu Himself doesn't need us. The Kedusha Kodesh Baruch Hu is beyond anything. We don't add anything to Him. We don't detract anything from Him. Whenever we say that we add Kedusha above, or that we detract Kedusha above, this is only in the bubble of creation itself, where things become relative, as it were. That every part of the Bria, starting from Olam Atzilus, going all the way down to Olam Asiyah, everything gets fed a steady diet, a minimal diet from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so it can exist, because otherwise it would simply cease to exist. When a person adds Kedusha, when a person does mitzvahs, when a person learns, it adds more Kedusha from above, from Ein Sof, from infinity. Because what it does, it adds kalim, it adds vessels. Imagine that you have a waterfall coming from above, pouring from above. Now, the water come and water everything. Now, that water, it just flows away. If you want to retain these waters, you have to come with a receptacle of some kind, and you hold it down to the water fill it up. What do you do if you want to fill it with more water? Well, you bring 2 pails or bigger pails, and so forth and so on. So the Olamis get the Kedusha, the Chayas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu at all times, to keep everything humming. But the avodah of Am Yisrael from below adds to create an influx of Kedusha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu above, more and more. So being that we, through our mitzvahs and through our tefillahs, gave the kalim, it is considered that we have actually added the Kedusha above. Because the Kedusha flowed all the time, but there was nothing to hold it, nothing to hold it in place. I mean, Every person earns about between $1 and $2 million during his lifetime. The problem is that most of it is gone. You know, if a person saves, then he collects it. He puts it together. Kiviyachol, the same thing as Baruchnis. We're adding Kedusha above. This is a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous lesson to each and every one of us about the aim of being together, the aim of being there when, you know, Talmidei Rabbeinu saying Torah, being in Uman when we can. These, of course, are, you know, to say the least, unusual times. But you should know that any kind of tefillah that you daven, any word of Torah that you do, when you connect yourself with all the tzaddikim amitim in our generation, all the tzaddikim amitim in all the generations, you're creating that kind of combination. Obviously, when the time is right, and you can do it in person. It's a big deal. I don't know, this guy, I mean, yeah. You know, it doesn't excite me, you know, I heard it all. I want to go to somebody who like, whoa, you know. It's okay. A person should always learn in a place where, you know, his heart pulls him to. But you should know it's a big thing to be there. I have no idea what's learning Torah in Zoom. But you could say, mitzad echad, that it acts the same, because the halacha is when you hear somebody on the telephone, and Zoom is no different than telephone, obviously, saying a bracha, you know, you hear it when he's saying it, not the recording, when he's saying it, halacha, you can tell me. So maybe from here we can learn that, yeah, us getting together, learning together, is, you know, kibbutz b'ayta tefillah. If I have the seichel to daven, you know, while you're all here, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know, to bring biur Torah. Because Reb Nosson explains that every single person has to be mechadish something every day. Now, and he says the chiddush is not just that you're saying, oh, you know something, wow, I have this gewaldige chiddush. I'm going to write a new Likuteu Moharan. That's not it. He says, this is it. He says, but also when a person gets a new Isairas, and he says, you know, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start this. I'm going to do this for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm going to do that. This is Chidush Torah. So especially when people are together and people hear me say, you know something? I'm going to do this. I'm going to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to open up a love of Elyon. I'm going to connect myself with everybody. And definitely, everybody that comes, everybody that is here, should also daven. So that we should learn. Because even though we are learning Baruch Hashem, Likuteu Moharan, on the most rudimentary level, because I couldn't possibly do it any other way. Simply don't know. This is Chidush Torah. This limud that we are learning together is forever. For each and every one of us. It is forever. It was like, I was in the shir was nice. No. This is forever. We're now, Baruch Hashem, with the Koyach of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, we're adding Kedusha above. We're instead of more, we're instead of less, we hear more, we hear less. We're able to implement more, we implement less. It has nothing to do with it. We're adding Kedusha above. And adding Kedusha above adds life. Adds life to each and every one of us in this world and the world to come. We are so amazingly fortunate. It's totally beyond human comprehension. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. We're like 700, 800 combinations, at least. And after 120 years, we're going to understand this story thoroughly, really the way it's supposed to be understood, with all the combinations. Everyone's part in the Torah. As long as our schos, our mata'ois, we just leave to hold down the inherent wickedness in each of every one of us. And asking for Be'urei Torah, we're asking only from the Kadosh Baruch Hu himself. B'chesed u'b'rachamim. B'chesed u'b'rachamim. As we learned in Sefer Maisis, the thing that there was Zocher in the house of the Tzaddik is to understand they're being fed and they're given everything that they need. You're being fed, you're given all your needs. Don't push. Obviously, a person needs to do what he needs to do. And it needs to be very tichtig, it needs to be very, very able, very resolute. At the same time, everything with tefillah, don't take it in force, because that yields the kind of results that we don't want. So, B'ezrat Hashem, we will finish here. We just finished the third portion. Actually, it's actually the first half. No, it's well, actually the fourth. The third and the fourth, up to half of the fourth, B'ezrat Hashem. So, Mitz Hashem, unless we're in Uman next week, B'ezrat Hashem, we will meet again to continue next Thursday. B'ezrat Hashem, Motzei Shabbos, 9:30. We'll learn Bli Neder, Sichas Hara. And Hashem should be with us, B'ezrat Hashem. Lilmod, Ulolamed, Lishma, Ulasas, L'Kayim, L'Kayim, Kol Direk, Talmud Teresecha Be'avo. Thank you so very much for giving me the schus to speak to you. I really, really, really